everyone. We're going to go ahead and get started. Good evening, and thank you all so much for being here. It's so good to see everyone here. My name is Leah Frieden, and it is my pleasure to welcome you to the Fayetteville Public Library, and welcome to those who are watching through live stream as well. Before you leave today, please do take a moment to fill out the library evaluations we've left for you. Those help us to plan for future programs, and there's a box to return them at the table just outside these doors. And speaking of future programs, I hope you'll join us this coming Saturday, February 24th at 2 p.m. for an afternoon with Nate Powell. Nate Powell is the National Book Award-winning artist of the March Trilogy about Congressman John Lewis, legend of the Civil Rights Movement. I'm delighted that Circles NWA partnered with the library for our event tonight. Many thanks to them. And with that, I'll turn things over to Christina.
Okay, thank you. Thank you to the Fayetteville Public Library for providing this space and for helping support this event. Welcome. This is Make a Plan to Vote, brought to you by Circles NWA. We're so thrilled that you're here. I'm Christina Williams. I'm the founder and executive director of Circles NWA, and I also have Anna Hurley here with us. She's our Big View director. So before we dive into our voting plan, I want to just briefly share about Circles, what we do, and why we're doing an event like this. So Circles is a poverty reduction initiative where we focus on helping low-income individuals and families pursue upward mobility from poverty. Circles is unique in that we flip the traditional mentorship model on its head to center the leadership of those who have experienced poverty. We call them our circle leaders. And that's not just a name. We actually really believe in the leadership of our circle leaders, that they're leaders in their own lives, they're leaders in our program, and they're the leaders that we believe we need in our community if we really want to solve these bigger issues plaguing our community, contributing to poverty. So each circle leader is matched with 2 or 3 volunteer allies. An ally commits to walking alongside a circle leader over the course of 18 months as the circle leader is pursuing their goals for upward mobility, working to increase their income, grow their connections, social capital, and develop as a leader in the community. So raise your hand if you're here and you're part of Circles either now or in the past. Awesome. Thank you, you guys, for everything that you're doing in our program and for our community. So as much as we want to believe that the move to get out of poverty is just this nice climb up the ladder, the reality is that there's actually real barriers that stand in the way. So at Circles, we are also working to remove those barriers that keep people stuck. So if we take a minute to imagine a barrier, that this wall is a barrier that we're facing in our community. If we don't want this barrier to be in place, there's a couple different things we could do, right? Maybe we build a gate so you can go through the wall. Maybe we find a ladder so you can go over the wall. Or maybe we just need to get a jackhammer and take the whole wall down. But we need to get rid of this barrier. So maybe we identify this is what we need to do, but then what's the next step? Like, do we need a new law? Do we need to go get some money allocated to this project? Do we need to show up at an elected official meeting and speak in public commenting, make our voices heard? Do we need to protest, do a rally? And maybe we figure out what we need to do, but then where do we go? Who do we talk to? How do we do all these things? And this is where why we do an event like this at Circles, because the people that we vote for, the responsibilities that they have, the power that they have for change, it's often hard to know what these different roles are. And so we want to help you feel confident when you go cast your vote. So often we go into the polling location and we look at the ballot and we're like, oh my gosh, I don't know, I skipped this, I guess. Or maybe I just don't even vote. Arkansas has the lowest voter turnout rate in the nation. And we want people to exercise their right to vote. This is how change happens in our community. So a few housekeeping items. Wi-Fi, you will need Wi-Fi. You can use your hotspot, but if you need it, the library, there's no password. You can get on the library Wi-Fi. Also, if you need a device, you can use your smartphone or computer, but if you need one, we have some extra ones over here, so just raise your hand and we can get you a device. Okay. Oops. Okay, so here's our roadmap for the night. So first, we're gonna go through the Voter 411. This is information that's going to help you find your sample ballot and know what districts and precincts and wards that you're in. And this is going to be page 1 of your worksheet. So everyone has a stapled worksheet in front of them. This is going to be page 1. Then we're going to dive into some voter education, where we're going to specifically talk about the different roles that you'll see on your ballot, especially those roles that we may not know as much about. So on the back of page 1, you'll see that there is a space for you to take notes when we're going through that section, okay? And then finally, for the third step on our roadmap, once you've found your sample ballot and you know more of what you're now looking at, you're gonna get some time to actually work on your own plan. We've worked to help curate all this helpful information onto one website so that you can research the positions, research the candidates before you go vote. This event is about the different roles. Circles is a nonpartisan organization, so we're not here to talk about specific candidates or advocate for any political party. We want you to know what is a Supreme Court justice, what is a prosecuting attorney, so that's what we're going to be focusing on tonight. So to begin, we're going to talk about the Voter 411, finding your sample ballot, and we're going to show you a short video on how you can do that.
Election season is upon us, so let's get ready to vote. We'll start with the basics, the Voter 411, brought to you by Circles NWA. Preparing to vote can feel overwhelming, but it doesn't have to be. There are many resources available to help you feel confident in casting your vote. Let's start with the basics. Where can I find my sample ballot? What district and precinct am I in? Where can I go to vote early? To answer all these questions, let's go to voterview.ar-nova.org. This is an official website created by the Arkansas Secretary of State and has all you need to answer these questions. To start, type in your first and last name. Select your birthday and click Look Up. From there, it will pull up your name, address, and precinct number. If you scroll down, you'll see a section called Sample Ballots with a link to the different ballots you can choose from. If it's a primary election, you can choose a ballot that includes the Democratic primary candidates or one with the Republican primary candidates. You can also select a nonpartisan ballot that will include only nonpartisan positions. If you choose a partisan ballot, you will see only your party's candidates for each position. It's not till the general election that you vote between parties. Some positions, like prosecuting attorney or Arkansas Supreme Court justice, are nonpartisan positions and will look exactly the same on all ballots. If it's a general election, you will only see one ballot. As you keep scrolling, you'll see a long list of early voting sites. And if you keep going, you'll see all the voting centers in your area. You can go to any voting center to cast your vote, including the county courthouse. But check VoterView before you go because operating hours can vary by day. From there, you can click on the drop-down button labeled Show to see all the different districts you're in. Due to redistricting, your districts may have recently changed, so you might want to check ahead of time. Luckily, your sample ballot is automatically customized for all your districts and precincts. Your vote matters, and through our votes, we decide who gets to fill the seats that rule our county courtrooms, that decide how our taxpayer dollars are spent, that write and pass new laws for the state of Arkansas, and that represent our voice in our local and state government. Here is when early voting starts, and Election Day is the last day to vote. Circles NWA is a nonpartisan organization focused on reducing poverty in our community. We put out voter education resources created to help our community feel confident in casting their votes, become better informed about the powers our elected officials have, and how these elected officials can impact people living in poverty. Circles is committed to helping families move out of poverty and fighting to reduce the barriers that keep them in poverty. Check out more of our voter resources on our Instagram and Facebook pages, as well as on our website at circlesnwa.org/vote.
Okay, good. Okay, so we're going to start our first working session. So everyone look at page 1. Using your computer or smartphone, I want you to pull up the VoterView website. You can scan that QR code on your paper or up on the screen, or just type in that website. So you're going to put, like the video said, you're going to put your name, first name, last name, your birthday, and then you're going to click Look Up. And then you're going to see all this information that we just showed on the video. You can see your sample ballot, just keep scrolling, the early voting centers, the day of voting centers, and then you have to click on that button, tiny little button that says Show, and it'll show all your districts. Don't worry too much about your sample ballot just yet. We'll get to that in our next working session. We're just going to give you a few minutes to fill out that first page. So if you have questions as you're going through this, just raise your hand, and we will. Someone will come over to answer your questions. Yes. Can they go leave with them? Can they go talk to them? Yeah. So if you've recently moved and you need to update your address, you can go talk to League of Women Voters. They can help you with that. You can also just call the county courthouse, and they can update it. One thing to note, we did mention in the video that you can vote at the county courthouse. On VoterView, it labels that as the quorum courtroom, but that's the county courthouse. The Fayetteville Public Library is also doing early voting tomorrow and Friday until 6 in their Walker room at the front of the original library.
Okay, one thing to note is that your precinct is the Fay, or it'll have your city and then 2 numbers, and then underneath it some numbers. That whole thing is your precinct. And you might not have every blank we have, you might not fill in everything. So there might be some that don't show on VoterView that in fact, that don't show on VoterView and they're not applicable.
Okay, I'm gonna give you about 1 more minute, and then you can keep working on it as we go through the rest of the information. Okay, we're going to move on to our next section, focusing on voter education. So before we kind of dive into what you'll see on your ballot, we wanted to just make a note about voting after a criminal conviction. This is some information provided by the ACLU. Arkansans have a constitutional right to have their voting rights reinstated, restored after completing a felony sentence. And that's based on the Arkansas Constitution, Amendment 51. So here's a few things that this may apply to you or this may apply to someone you know, but this is really helpful information because often people aren't sure if or when they can vote. So what if I've been charged with a crime? Charges only do not affect your right to vote. What if I've been convicted of a crime? So if it's a misdemeanor crime, then you can still vote. This does not affect your ability to vote. If you happen to be in jail, then you need to request an absentee ballot, but you're still allowed to vote. If you've been convicted of a felony, there's some requirements. You can vote if you are not currently incarcerated, you are not currently on probation or parole, and you have paid all the fines. Okay, so if you want to get your voting rights restored after a felony, you have to check all these boxes. There's a handout on the table from the ACLU that will walk you through what you need to do, the paperwork you need to turn in, but it is possible to have your voting rights restored. Okay, now we recommend going to page 2 of your voting plan where you can start taking some notes, okay? So we're gonna dive into the information here. The first thing to note is that Arkansas has open primaries. Okay, this means that you don't have to be registered with a certain political party to vote in their primary. You can vote for your party. If you're not registered with any, you can pick any party, or you can do what's called crossover voting. You might be registered with one party, but you actually choose to vote in another party's primary. You can do any of that in the state of Arkansas because of the open primaries. So on your voter view, if you scroll all the way back up to the top where we have the sample ballot section, you're gonna see 3 ballot options. So if you're in Benton County, it's very nicely labeled. You can see there's a nonpartisan, a Republican, or a Democrat. If you're in Washington County, it's a lot more text here, but you can see the top one is the Democratic, the middle one is the nonpartisan, and the bottom one is the Republican. 3 different ballots. And you'll see different positions based on what ballot you pick for the primaries. However, the same nonpartisan judicial positions are on all of the ballots. So let me explain more what that means. So here's the party primaries, okay? The primaries is where you get to choose the candidates for the general election, which candidates are gonna represent that party in the general election. So if you pick a Democratic ballot, you're gonna see that there are Democratic candidates labeled under the Democratic Party that you get to vote for. If you pick Republican, you'll see it's different candidates listed for these positions like president, state treasurer, listed as the Republican Party candidates. If you just pick the nonpartisan, if you choose not to vote in the primaries for a political party, you'll just see these nonpartisan. If you do pick a primary ballot, you'll also see these. So this is what everyone sees no matter which ballot you pick. These are the nonpartisan judicial general election positions. These are the ones we're going to focus on a lot tonight because everyone's voting for them and they're often really hard to figure out. But a general election is it's the final one. It's where you select the candidate for office. So these are not primaries. This is where we're actually picking these candidates. Okay, so I'm going to hand the mic over to Anna, and we are going to dive into the Arkansas State Supreme Court.
All right, I just hit my steps goal. Okay, so we're going to look at the Arkansas State Supreme Court. It can be very confusing, but it is, as Christina just said, it is the election for these positions. And what we're about to talk about, every Arkansan is going to be voting on. So it doesn't matter where you live, what party you're in, every single person has the opportunity to vote for the state Supreme Court positions. Okay, so all Arkansans are going to vote for the one position, which is the State Supreme Court Chief Justice. There's 4 people running for that. And then we have 2 people who are going to be running for one role as the Associate Justice. We're going to dive more into the details in a second. All right, so we're really quick going to show you another doodly that kind of explains the Arkansas State Supreme Court and a little bit more about what it even is.
In this next video, we will answer the question, what is the Arkansas State Supreme Court? Brought to you by Circles NWA. Hearing the word Supreme Court may bring to mind images of Washington, D.C. and justices outfitted in black robes. And while you're not wrong, you don't have to imagine yourself all the way in D.C. to find a Supreme Court. In fact, each state has its own Supreme Court, whose central role is to be the final decider of what the law means and to interpret the state constitution. The Arkansas Supreme Court is both the highest court in Arkansas and the court of last resort. This means the Supreme Court is the last stop for cases when parties have exhausted all other avenues, like the lower district, circuit, or appellate courts for resolutions. Most court cases end in one of these lower courts. However, there are also several kinds of cases the Supreme Court will always hear. Some of those include criminal appeals where the death penalty or life imprisonment has been imposed, appeals pertaining to elections and election procedures, and all appeals involving the interpretation of the Arkansas Constitution. Who makes up the Supreme Court? There are 7 Arkansas Supreme Court justices who are elected in statewide nonpartisan races. Nonpartisan means the justices are not formally affiliated with any political party. The justices each serve staggered 8-year terms so that the entire court isn't replaced in a single election year. The roles include Chief Justice and 6 Associate Justices. Justices must have been licensed to practice law in Arkansas for at least 8 years before running for office. What powers do they have? Let's start with the Chief Justice. While the Chief Justice's vote is no more powerful than any other justice, this role is tasked with more of the day-to-day administrative responsibilities of the judicial system, like making sure all legal cases are handled promptly and ensuring that court business is conducted properly. All justices, including the Chief Justice, have equal power to hear cases, write opinions, interpret laws, and ultimately interpret our state constitution. Interpreting the Constitution involves analyzing its language and historical context to understand its meaning and how it applies to current legal issues. At least 4 out of the 7 justices must agree for the court to reach a consensus on any matter, whether it's a minor internal decision or a significant decision about amending the Constitution. Why is this role important to our community? Our state Supreme Court and its elected justices play a crucial role in shaping our state and local communities. The Arkansas Supreme Court protects our rights and freedoms by ensuring fair interpretations of the law. They serve as the final safeguard for individuals' rights and freedoms. Some examples include decisions about who can vote, who can marry whom, who can access health care and under what circumstances, and countless other individual and collective rights. It's important to note that the court should not be influenced by public opinion or political agendas. Justices have a nonpartisan role, ensuring that the court remains independent from outside pressures, including politicians, voters, or lobbyists. This means Arkansans should evaluate candidates based on their legal experience, judicial temperament and philosophy, decision-making record, and commitment to upholding the law, rather than a political affiliation or party platform. Justices are elected to uphold fairness and impartiality, ensuring liberty and justice for all Arkansans. Circles NWA is a nonpartisan organization focused on reducing poverty in our community.
Okay, we're not going to have you watch the end of that, but so that gives you an idea a little bit about the Supreme Court, what they do, and the roles of the justices. A few things to remember, which I hope you have by now, that it is a nonpartisan role. The judicial positions are all nonpartisan. Some of the cases they will always hear are appeals related to the death penalty or life imprisonment, any constitutional amendments, and then elections and election-related matters. There are 7 justices, including the Chief Justice, that serve a total of 8-year terms, and a majority must agree in order to reach a consensus. It's high level, some of the most important things to know. So we're gonna dive in and look at the Chief Justice and that role that's up for election starting yesterday. Okay, we have, so yes, their vote is no more powerful than any other. Ultimately, what sets them apart is that they have more administrative duties. They've got to make sure things are running smoothly in the courts, and they serve an 8-year term as well. Specifically, looking at who we have running in the race now, we have 3 individuals who are currently Supreme Court justices, and then 1 individual who is a former member of the Arkansas House of Representatives. If one of the current justices wins, that means their seat will be vacant, and the governor will appoint their replacement for the remainder of their term. Christina is going to talk to you a little bit about some specifics about that.
So just some additional context around vacancies and appointments and runoffs, some things you may hear, especially around this Chief Justice race. When someone who currently serves in a position is elected to a new position and they still have time remaining in their term, that leaves a vacancy in that position. And what happens to fill that position is the Arkansas governor gets to appoint someone to fill that position until the next election. For a lot of these roles, we're not going to be able to vote for them in 2024 because there's not enough time for people to say they're running and all that. So the appointee will serve until 2026. So that's the remainder of the existing term. So that's vacancies and appointments. This happens not just in Supreme Court justice. Any vacant position can end up with a governor appointing the role to fill the remainder of the term. Runoffs happen if a majority of votes is not obtained. There'll be a runoff in November. So for this Chief Justice race, you'll see there's 4 candidates. It's highly likely that there will be a runoff because none of them will reach that majority. So we will not have that new Chief Justice likely until the November election, where they pare it down to probably 2 candidates.
Okay, so now we have 1 role of Associate Justice up for election, and they hear cases, they write opinions, and they interpret the laws. They are typically 8-year terms. However,
This is actually a special election to fill a vacant seat because a former justice passed away in 2023. So whoever wins this spot will just serve the remaining 6-year term. So you're electing them for a 6-year term instead of an 8-year term ultimately. One of the candidates is a current Supreme Court justice, and the other one is a current circuit court judge. So note, if either one of these wins, since they're both judicial positions, the governor will appoint their replacement. Okay, so a key resource that we have on our website that you'll be able to find in just a little bit under nonpartisan judicial election, because it's really challenging to find out information about those running for these positions, specifically because they are nonpartisan roles. It wasn't until 2000 that we actually voted to turn them into nonpartisan roles. Prior to the year 2000, they were party-affiliated positions. So since it became nonpartisan, it's kind of challenging to figure out the stances of individuals because they're not really allowed to say much about their political beliefs. So this resource was published just yesterday by the Arkansas Advocate, and it's a great voting guide to your Arkansas State Supreme Court candidates, and you'll be able to find that to do some research in just a moment. Okay, we're really quickly gonna look at the district judge and the prosecuting attorney roles. So the district judge serves a 4-year term, and what we have up on the ballot now specifically is for Springdale and Elm Springs, but it's all of District 2, which will fall into some of Washington and Benton counties, so it's a likelihood that you might see it on your ballot, although they might not actually be a judge that serves your immediate court. They primarily preside over cases involving all misdemeanor crimes, which actually is a large span of things, traffic violations, and in some cases, they may set bonds for felony cases. Specifics on this race is that the current district judge is retiring after 12 years, and so that's in line with now it's an election, and so one of the candidates is a chief deputy prosecutor in the Springdale courts as of now, and another one is a private practicing attorney and is a businessman. And again, on our website, there's a few more resources to do some research. And we're gonna show you, next up, we're gonna talk about prosecuting attorney, and we're gonna show you one more video. This is the last one for the night, and then I'll dive into the prosecuting attorney race.
Brought to you by Circles NWA. The prosecuting attorney is the office responsible for prosecuting felony crimes in our county. They also prosecute juvenile cases as well as misdemeanor cases that are outside the scope of city-based prosecutors but still within county limits. There's a prosecuting attorney elected for Washington and Madison counties combined, and one for Benton County. What powers do they have? Because the amount of crimes reported is too high to prosecute every single one, the prosecuting attorney holds the power to determine which cases to prosecute. This means they have a lot of power to exercise judgment as to what charges to bring and what charges to drop, or when to offer a plea deal. Practically, this power gets reflected in who the prosecuting attorney decides to charge and what charges they bring against the person for the accused crimes. How can this position impact our community? The prosecuting attorney is the key piece to providing and maintaining safety in our community. They work to protect victims of crime and hold people accountable when they break the law. When there is a murder or violent crime, the prosecuting attorney is there to represent the state in prosecuting the crime. At the same time, the vast power of this role to exercise judgment means the prosecuting attorney is also a key piece to ensuring our criminal justice system is fair and equitable. Minoritized and marginalized populations, such as people of color or people living in poverty, often have different experiences in the criminal justice system than people in the majority population. The prosecuting attorney can make decisions like requesting bail that tend to fall heavier on people in poverty. Many people in our jails today are too poor to pay bail amounts and therefore must sit in jail despite not yet being found guilty of a crime. We all have biases, but it is important to recognize that bias in the criminal justice system can lead to higher rates of incarceration for minorities and marginalized groups. The prosecuting attorney also has the power to affect special populations, such as charging minors as adults or committing people dealing with mental illness to a hospital. The prosecuting attorney has much power to both keep our community safe and ensure fairness and equity for everyone involved in our criminal justice system. Circles NWA is a
Okay, so that's a bit about the prosecuting attorney. And this is what we have is a role that's specifically for Benton County. So if you're in Washington County, you will not be seeing this on your ballot, but it's an important race. It's an important role. It's a nonpartisan role. It is a 4-year term, and the prosecuting attorney can, as you just saw, decide whether to charge a person, make recommendations about a person's bail, and make recommendations about a person's prison sentencing. Context for this race, the previous prosecuting attorney resigned in 2023, and the winner will again serve out the remaining 2 years of his term. One of the individuals is a current Benton County Chief Deputy Prosecuting Attorney, and the other is a former Benton County Deputy Prosecuting Attorney. Okay, Christine is going to talk to you about some more things you may see on your ballot.
Okay, so some other things you may see on your ballot. First is a school millage. So for all the different school systems, there's a millage. There's no change in the millage from what it has been to what it will be. So this is really more of a formality. You're just not really making any decision here. The other thing you'll see is unopposed candidates. So candidates that are unopposed in school or nonpartisan judicial races, when you checking that box, you'll see this message under there, but they'll be considered elected without the necessity of including their names on the ballot. Just saving space, basically, because they're running unopposed, they're gonna win. So there's some things that you may see on our website of people who are running for the positions that you won't see on your ballot. For example, our current prosecuting attorney in Washington County is running for circuit court judge, but you will not see that on your ballot. It's also one, for example, that will leave a vacancy in our prosecuting attorney position that will be filled by the governor. U.S. Congress, if you choose a Republican primary ballot, the U.S. Congress District 3, you will have a choice to vote between two candidates for Congress. The current U.S. Congressperson versus a state senator who's challenging the current incumbent for the spot. And then finally, the state treasurer. Something to note, if you choose a Republican primary ballot, you'll see that our current Secretary of State is running for state treasurer. There is a challenger on the Democratic side. If the current Secretary of State wins the treasurer position, that will leave a vacancy in the Secretary of State position that will be appointed by the governor. So, now it's time for our second little working session. If you want to look at page 3 and 4 of your worksheet, this is where you get to make your plan to vote. You use Voter View and find your sample ballot, and then write down which positions you see on your sample ballot. So you'll see likely president, you may see congressperson, you may see treasurer, and then as well as the judicial ones. Write down what those positions are. Once you have all those written down on your paper, scan the code, either here or on your worksheet, and you can go to our voter website. And that's where you'll begin to research the candidates, research these positions more, and figure out what your plan is for voting. You can actually take this paper in to vote when you go vote. You don't have to memorize this. This is not a test. You can take this with you if it's helpful for whatever you decide for your candidates. So we're going to give you some time to work on your plan. Please raise your hand if you have questions, and we will come around and help you out.
We had a question about the federal offices and in specific the president. You might see some individuals on the ballot that are no longer running. So for example, I can't even think of anybody's name right now. There's some on the Democratic Party and there's several on the Republican Party that are no longer. Asa Hutchinson is no longer running on the Republican ticket, and Marianne Williamson is no longer running on the Democratic ticket, for example. So we haven't provided a whole lot of resources around the president, but that's a little easier to sort of Google and find out. But just so you know, there are people that have dropped out. However, they will still show up on the primary ballot. So. Yeah. So last call for pizza, if anybody wants any more. And then we had one question come up we had a question come up that a few people have had, which is why might a justice go from position 3 to position 2, for example? And the specific justice that's looking to change positions, besides the 3 that are going for Chief Justice, she has given her official reason a strange law in Arkansas State Supreme Court, is that if a justice gets elected after they turn 70, they lose access to their retirement benefits, weirdly. So if she can change her election dates, she can actually, if she can stay in that long, then she can actually get voted in again when she is, I think, 68 or 69, keeping her benefits. So that's the official reason that's been given for the desire to change positions, because it doesn't really give you any other powers. So that's if you're wondering about that, that's the reason that has been publicized. Okay, one last thing I'm gonna say is if you decide to vote in the Republican primaries or the Democratic primaries, and then in the November election, you want to vote for the opposite party, you can do that. Just because you vote in one party for the primaries does not mean that you need to vote for those same candidates or for that party's candidates in the general election. So if you have strong preferences one way or another, specifically in the primaries, you can do that and then vote a different way in the general.
Okay, we're gonna do a little bit more information before we close out tonight. Feel free to keep working on your plan, take it with you until you feel really good about it. Some other things to know as you go out into this community. Why are people collecting signatures? You may have run into some people with some clipboards that are asking for your signature. So we want to make sure you feel like you know what they're talking about. So there's a way in Arkansas for citizens to bring ballot measures on our November election. This ballot measures can be put on by our state legislature or by citizens. And so if it's a citizen-led initiative, then the ballot issue groups have to collect enough signatures in order to qualify for a spot in the November ballot. If it's a constitutional amendment, they have to get at least 90,704 signatures. If it's an act or state law, they have to get at least 72,563 voter signatures. You may ask why these random numbers. It's based on a percentage of people who voted for the governor. It's a certain percentage that you have to get, and so it changes based on the previous election, but this is how much they'll have to get, and a certain percentage of those signatures must come from at least 50 of the state's 75 counties. So by signing a petition, a voter is expressing support for the issue to be on the ballot for voters to decide. So by signing this, you're not voting for it. You're not saying like, I'm casting my vote. You're just saying, I want the voters to have a choice if they want to vote for this or not. We want it to be on the ballot. And the deadline to submit petitions is July 5th. So you're probably gonna see this all through the spring, early summer, farmers markets, things like that. People will be collecting ballot signatures. There's 10 citizen-led ballot groups, initiatives out right now. There may be more if more get approved, but that's what we have right now. So that's quite a few that you may bump into. So I'm gonna just go through those so you can kind of see what they are. So first, there's 4 ballot titles around government transparency. So the first one is called Arkansas Government Openness Amendment. Sorry, there we go. This would establish government transparency as a right of Arkansas citizens and prohibit the General Assembly, which is our elected officials in Congress, in our state legislature, from enacting laws affecting government transparency without a vote of the people. So other names for the same amendment that you may see is the Arkansas Government Disclosure Amendment, the Open Meetings and Open Records in State and Local Government Amendment. So there's 3, but the language of each is the same. The ballot title is just different. So 3 of the same thing. And then the 4th one is an act, not an amendment, the Government Disclosure Act. This would codify the definition of a public meeting, protect access to public records and the right to appeal denials, and create a new commission to enforce citizens' rights under the Freedom of Information Act, FOIA. And this would become a state law if it's passed. It's been a lot, you may have heard a lot about what's happening with FOIA in the news. So that's something you can look into further. Okay, the next one is an act to exempt feminine hygiene products and diapers from sales and use tax. So what this would do is exempt period products and diapers from local and state sales tax. Here's some context around that one. These products are currently taxed as luxury items, which means they have a higher tax rate than a normal sales tax. If this is passed, Arkansas would be the 30th state to get rid of sales tax for these products, so this is something a lot of other states are doing. But currently, you may or may not have known this, I didn't know this, they're taxed as luxury products. So this would become a state law if passed. Okay, absentee voting amendment of 2024. This would amend the Arkansas Constitution to declare absentee voting as a privilege rather than a right. It would only allow absentee ballots to be distributed within 30 days of an election instead of the Friday before election, so restricting that a little bit. Would prohibit any Arkansas election from being conducted using internet, Bluetooth, or wireless connection now or in the future. This is a constitutional amendment. The next one is the Arkansas Abortion Amendment of 2024. This one would allow abortion in cases of rape, incest, fatal fetal anomaly, or when in a physician's good faith medical judgment, abortion services are needed to protect a pregnant female's life or to protect a pregnant female from a physical disorder, physical illness, or physical injury. And it will allow abortion services within 18 weeks of fertilization, which is 20 weeks pregnant. For some context, right now, abortion is only allowed in Arkansas for a medical emergency. That term is not clearly defined currently. And that would be a constitutional amendment. The next one is the Arkansas Historic or Special Interest Vehicle Act. This would allow vehicles to display an antique or historic vehicle license plate at a minimum of 25 years. Right now, it has to be 45 years. So this would shorten it to only 25 years, and this would be a state law. And then the last one here that this ballot title just got approved yesterday is the Arkansas Medical Marijuana Amendment of 2024. This would allow nurse practitioners, physician assistants, and pharmacists, in addition to doctors, to sign off on medical marijuana cards, would allow patients to grow cannabis at home, and would legalize the drug recreationally if the federal government ends its prohibition against marijuana. And this would be a constitutional amendment. There's more information on all of these on our website, and as more comes out about these, we will continue to add to them. We've summarized them here. They're really long if you want to read through all of them, but this is kind of our overview. And then just some reminders of other things that are happening in the community. Arkansas Advocates for Children and Family, through their Kids Count, is hosting a coffee with the candidates this coming Saturday in Springdale. If you want more information, Laura Kellums has some flyers that has the location on it. What's the location? Okay. Center for Nonprofits next to the Jones Center. And then we have League of Women Voters over here. If you or someone you know wants to register to vote, wants an address change, or is interested in any of these ballot signatures, they're going to be out in our community throughout the next few months helping with these different things. You can also go talk to them at the table today. Okay, so upcoming Circles events. There's some things that are happening. Yes, Virgil. Sorry, I can't hear you.
I wanted to ask a question about the special constitutional amendments.
Okay.
Now, with those passed, well, one thing is I noticed like it seems like a lot of them get thrown out for some technical reason, but not after they're passed. But I guess.
Yeah, so with a lot of these citizen-led initiatives, there's a lot of intricacies around the ballot titles. So they'll propose one, it'll get thrown out. They'll propose another. The goal for the Attorney General is that it's clear enough for the people to know what they're talking about. And it can be really hard to sum up these really long things in a short title. So if there's more questions, feel free to come talk to me after the event. Hold on one second. We need to wrap up. But just to talk about some upcoming Circles events we would love for you to be at. We have one coming up in April called Home is Where the Hardship Is. This is an event that's really going to try to focus on the stress that's happening in our community around housing right now. We want to highlight the stories of people that are experiencing this and come together and talk about what we can do as a community. So we invite you to save the date and come right back here in April, on April 10th, to be part of that event. Also encourage you to sign up for our newsletter on our website. This will keep you informed of the different things that we're doing in the community and different events that we're having. If you're interested in becoming a circle leader or a volunteer ally in the future, we're about to start recruiting for our cohort number 4, which will start this fall. So you can get more information on our website, and we'll send out reminders in our newsletter. And then you can stay tuned for, we know the general election's coming up in November, so we're going to host another one of these in October to help you make a plan to vote for that. There's going to be a whole lot more on the ballot. We're going to talk about all those different positions as well. So that concludes our event tonight. Thank you so much to the Fayetteville Public Library for allowing us to be in this space. The library does close at 8, and so we have to be out of here by 7:45, so just keep that in mind as you're hanging out and talking. Thank you so much to everyone for being here tonight.